The blizzard swallowed Chicago whole. Daniel Hartwell had seen storms before, the kind that closed highways and knocked out power grids, the kind that turned a 40-minute commute into 3 hours of white-knuckled crawling. But this one was different. This one felt intentional. The city had gone quiet in a way that reminded him of something he hadn't thought about in years: the silence before an ambush. His shift had been canceled at 11. A water main under the lakeshore facility had burst, flooding the lower levels, and the site supervisor had sent everyone home. Daniel didn't argue. He never argued about getting back to his daughter. He drove carefully, wipers slapping at the snow, heater blasting. Lily would be asleep by now. It was past her bedtime. Clara would have made sure of that warm bath. Story. The little stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Everything predictable, everything safe. He turned onto Kimball and noticed the lights in his house were lower than they should have been. Not off. Not exactly wrong. Just low. He parked at the curb, cut the engine, and sat for a moment with the snow coming down hard enough to blur the streetlights. Something in his chest, something old and trained, had gone still. He looked at the front walk. There were footprints in the snow. 2 sets, maybe 3. Coming from the side of the house, not from the street. Nobody walks through a blizzard from the side of a building unless they don't want to be seen from the front. Daniel reached under his seat and found the tactical flashlight he kept there from old habit. He didn't think about why he was moving quietly, why he was stepping around the loudest patches of snow as he approached the door. He just did it. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. The front door was unlocked, not broken, not forced, just unlocked when he was certain Clara always locked it after dinner. He pushed it open 1 inch at a time. The hallway was dark. The only light came from the kitchen, a faint orange glow, like a lamp turned to its lowest setting. The house smelled of the chicken soup Clara had made that morning, and beneath it, faintly, something else. Something cold. Something that had come in from outside. He stepped inside. A hand shot out of the darkness and grabbed his arm. Clara pressed her back against the wall, one hand wrapped around Daniel's forearm and the other raised. Palm flat, fingers spread the universal signal for stop. Don't move, don't speak. Her face was wrong. That was the first thing he registered. Clara Whitfield was 29 years old and had worked for him for 11 months, and in all that time he had seen her frazzled, tired, exasperated when Lily refused to eat her vegetables, even frustrated once when the dishwasher flooded the kitchen floor. He had never seen her like this. She was terrified in the way that people are terrified when they have already had time to think about how badly things could go. She leaned in close, mouth almost touching his ear. They're still upstairs. Her voice was barely breath. 2 of them, maybe 3. They came in through the basement window 20 minutes ago. I heard them on the stairs and I got Lily into her closet and told her it was a game. She thinks we're hiding from the snow monster. Daniel's heart rate had dropped the moment he crossed the threshold, not from calm, but from focus. He recognized the feeling. He had lived in it for 3 years, during a stretch of his life he rarely discussed. Lily's in the closet, he breathed, locked from the inside. She has her rabbit and her flashlight. She thinks it's an adventure. You didn't call the police. It wasn't a question, but Clara answered it anyway. My phone's on the kitchen counter. When I heard them on the stairs, I had maybe 4 seconds to get Lily somewhere safe and get back down here without being seen. I didn't have time to grab it. He processed this. How long have they been up there? 20 minutes. Maybe a little more. They haven't come down. I've been standing here ever since, trying to figure out what to do. She exhaled shakily. I've never been so glad to hear someone's key in a lock. Daniel looked down the hallway, then up the dark staircase. The house was quiet except for the storm hammering at the windows. Somewhere outside, a branch cracked under the weight of ice and fell. He reached into his coat pocket and pressed his phone into Clara's hand. Go to the kitchen. Get behind the counter, low. Call 911. Keep your voice as quiet as you can and leave the line open even if they stop talking to you. Don't hang up." She took the phone. Her hands were steadier than her face. "What are you going to do?" "Buy time." He didn't tell her the other thing, the thing he had understood the moment she described 2 or 3 people coming in through the basement window during a blizzard, moving quietly through the upper floor without ransacking anything. That wasn't how burglars worked. Burglars grabbed and ran. They made noise. They broke things. These people had come in carefully. They were waiting. They were waiting for something specific. He moved toward the stairs. He had memorized the staircase the way he used to memorize floor plans, not deliberately, just as a function of living in a space, of moving through it in the dark when Lily had a nightmare, and he didn't want to turn on lights and fully wake her. He knew which step creaked, the 4th, and which wall his shoulder brushed if he drifted, left the 17th inch of the wallboard above the banister. He knew the geometry of the upper landing, the way sound carried from the bathroom at the end of the hall versus the 2 bedrooms on the left side. He went up on the right side of each step, weight distributed toward the wall. His breathing was slow, controlled. The tactical flashlight was in his left hand, switched off. It wasn't a weapon, but it was heavy and it was something. At the top of the stairs, he paused. The hallway was dark. Lily's room was at the far end, the door was pulled almost shut, a sliver of darkness at the edge. The bathroom door to his left was open. The door to his own bedroom was closed, and beneath it was a thin line of light. His bedroom. He stood perfectly still and listened. Movement. Slow, careful, methodical. The sound of drawers being opened, closed again. The soft scrape of something being moved across his hardwood floor, his desk chair, maybe, or the box he kept under the bed. They were searching. Not grabbing, not stuffing things into bags. Searching for something specific, with a patience that required knowing where to look and not yet having found it. His mind catalogued what was in that room. Clothes, the furniture that had come with the house, a box of old paperwork he kept meaning to shred, a lockbox in the false bottom of the closet that held his service records, and the small amount of cash he kept for emergencies. And one other thing. One thing he hadn't thought about in 4 years. He moved to the wall beside his bedroom door and pressed his back flat against it. He could hear 2 distinct movement patterns inside 2 people, moving around different parts of the room. Coordinated. Professional silence, the kind you learn. The kind that doesn't come naturally. He knew what that kind of silence meant. He had been that silence, once. He raised a fist to knock, not from politeness, but because every second they were focused on the door was a second they were not focused on anything else, and then stopped himself. If they were armed and trained, opening this door wide was the wrong move. The question was not how to confront them. The question was how to know what they wanted before the confrontation happened. Because what they wanted might change every calculation. He moved instead to Lily's door. He pushed it open just wide enough to slip inside and pulled it shut behind him. The room was dark. He could smell the lavender detergent Clara used on Lily's bedsheets, and the faintly waxy smell of the crayons Lily kept in a cup on her nightstand. He crossed to the closet. He knocked twice, softly, the code they used during thunderstorms. 2 knocks meant Daddy's here, a beat of silence, and then, muffled through the door. "Daddy?" Her voice was barely a whisper, because she thought they were playing the snow monster game. She was 6 years old and she was hiding in a closet in the dark during a blizzard, and she was whispering because she thought it was an adventure. Daniel pressed his forehead against the closet door and breathed. "Stay in there, Bug," he said, barely audible. "Snow monster's still out there. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Okay?" "Okay." A pause. "Daddy, I have 3 crackers left from the snack I hid in here. Do you want one? Save them for me." He straightened up. He went back to the door. He had about 4 minutes before the police arrived, assuming Clara had gotten through clearly, assuming the 911 dispatcher had understood her, assuming patrol cars could move through the blizzard at any kind of speed. 4 minutes was either plenty of time or not nearly enough, depending entirely on what the people in his room decided to do. His phone buzzed once Clara, sending a text confirmation from the kitchen. Police en route, 8 minutes estimated. Storm conditions, 8 minutes. He made a decision. He knocked on his own bedroom door. Not a soft knock, a normal knock, the knock of someone who lived there and had every reason to be standing in the hallway at midnight. The movement inside stopped. "I know you're in there," Daniel said, his voice steady, conversational. "I know there are 2 of you. You came in through the basement window, which means you also know there's a child in this house, and I'm going to assume you're professional enough to want to keep this clean. So here's what I'm offering. Tell me what you want, and we can skip the part where anyone does anything stupid." Silence. Then the door opened. The man was in his mid-30s, lean, with the kind of posture that came from military training, weight-centered, hands visible, nothing aggressive. He was wearing dark clothes, a knit cap, and boots still damp with snow. His face was calm in a way that was itself a kind of training. He looked at Daniel with the flat, assessing expression of someone running threat calculations. "Mr. Hartwell," the man said. "Not a question. An identification." "You have me at a disadvantage," Daniel said. "You know my name. My name is Rourke. I'm going to ask you to step inside the room and close the door. There's no reason for this to be difficult." "There are 2 reasons it might be difficult," Daniel said. "One is my daughter in the closet at the end of the hall. The other is whoever's behind you, whose name you haven't told me." Rourke's expression didn't change. He stepped aside. A second figure emerged from the interior of the room, a woman, roughly the same age, same stillness. She had close-cropped blonde hair and a bruise on her jaw that was several days old. "Calloway," she said, not introducing herself so much as declaring. Daniel recognized neither of them, but he recognized the type. He had been the type. He stepped into the room and closed the door. His bedroom had been methodically searched but not destroyed. Drawers were open. His closet door stood ajar. The box from under the bed sat on the floor, its contents arranged with the careful disorder of people who had gone through it item by item. But nothing had been taken. He could tell at a glance. They hadn't found it yet. "The item we're looking for," Rourke said, "is a hard drive, approximately the size of a deck of cards, black casing, a green stripe on the left side. We have reason to believe it was brought to this address 14 months ago and has remained here since." "By whom?" Rourke and Calloway exchanged a fraction of a glance. "By the woman you knew as Rachel Moon," Calloway said. The name landed in the room like something dropped from a height. Daniel was quiet for a moment. "Rachel is dead," he said. "We know. She died in a car accident on the Eisenhower Expressway 16 months ago. The police ruled it an accident." "We know what the police ruled," Rourke said. Daniel looked at him. "You're telling me they were wrong?" Neither of them answered, which was its own kind of answer. "And Lily," Daniel said slowly, "is the reason we need the drive?" Calloway said. "Not a threat. An explanation. Sit down, Mr. Hartwell. We have less than 10 minutes before local police arrive, and you need to understand what you're holding before they get here." He sat on the edge of his bed. They remained standing, which told him something about their assessment of the situation. They didn't think he was a threat, or they thought they could handle it if he became one. Either interpretation was complicated. "Rachel Moon wasn't her real name," Calloway began. "She was a contractor, freelance, highly specialized, financial forensics and data recovery. She worked for a private intelligence firm out of Washington for about 6 years before she went independent. She told me she was an accountant," Daniel said. "For a certain definition of accountant, that's accurate." Calloway's voice was not unkind. "She found you about 2.5 years ago. We believe the relationship was genuine. That part isn't in question. What's relevant is what she was working on during that time." Rourke pulled a small tablet from inside his jacket and turned the screen toward Daniel. On it was a photograph of a document, dense columns of numbers, routing numbers, and account identifiers. Rachel was building a case against a man named Warren Aldgate. He runs a logistics and import company called Aldgate Continental. On paper, it's perfectly legitimate. In practice, it's a mechanism for laundering approximately $80 million a year through a series of shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Cyprus. You're telling me Rachel was investigating this man. We're telling you she had essentially completed the investigation. She had assembled everything necessary to put Aldgate in a federal prison for 20 years. Account records, transaction trails, names of the shell company, directors, everything, compiled and verified, on a single encrypted drive. Rourke lowered the tablet, and then she died on the Eisenhower Expressway. The storm beat against the window. Snow had accumulated on the outer ledge until it began to fall off in slow, heavy slides. She left it here, Daniel said. We believe she did. She would have known she was being watched in the final weeks. If she sensed the noose tightening, she would have created a safe deposit somewhere she trusted. Somewhere Aldgate's people wouldn't look. She trusted me, Daniel said. It came out flatter than he intended. Yes. He thought about the last months of Rachel's life, how she had seemed tired in a way that sleep didn't fix, how she had started leaving things at his house. A jacket, a box of books, a set of kitchen knives she said she had no room for anymore, barely used. A photograph of the lakeshore that she had framed and then decided looked wrong on her wall. Small accumulations of a life being quietly and deliberately dispersed to someone she trusted, like a person who understands a storm is coming and starts moving valuables to higher ground while the sky is still clear. He had thought she was going through a difficult stretch. He had thought about suggesting she talk to someone. He had made a note to himself twice and let it slide both times into the ordinary friction of days. He had thought a lot of things that had turned out to be the wrong things. And Lily? He asked. Rachel's biological daughter, Calloway said quietly. She gave the child to you 5 months before her death, citing overwork and instability. The legal transfer of guardianship was processed through a Chicago family court. It was all legitimate. I know it was legitimate. I was there. What we're telling you is that Rachel knew she was going to die. She arranged for Lily to be with someone she trusted before it happened. She put the evidence somewhere safe, and she put her daughter somewhere safe, and then she drove to a meeting she knew was a trap. Daniel stood up. He needed to stand up. He walked to the window and looked out at the snow coming down, at the orange-gray sky above the rooftops. His hands were steady. His chest was a different matter. Aldgate's people, he said. They're the ones who sent you. No, Rourke said. We were sent by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Northern District of Illinois. We're not Aldgate's people. We're the people who have been trying to build the case Rachel spent 18 months building, without the drive she was carrying when she died. He paused. We're the good guys, Mr. Hartwell. I understand how this looks from your position, but we came in through the window in a blizzard at midnight because Aldgate's people have been watching the front of this house for the past 3 days. Daniel turned from the window. Show me, he said. Rourke pulled up a second image on the tablet. A grainy but unmistakable shot of a dark SUV parked on the far side of Kimball Avenue, partially obscured by a delivery van. The timestamp in the corner read 3 days prior. In the next image, the same SUV in the same location, different timestamp 2 days ago, then yesterday, then this morning. Street surveillance from a friendly private source, Rourke said. We've been tracking their tracking. Why not just come to me directly? Daniel asked. Knock on the front door. Show me credentials. Because we had to assume your house was wired, Calloway said. Aldgate has the resources. If there were listening devices inside, walking up to your front door and announcing ourselves would have been a problem, Daniel finished. Yes, and coming in through the basement window during a blizzard and searching my bedroom without my knowledge was better. Operationally, yes. Calloway had the professional decency to look mildly uncomfortable about it. We identified the window as the one entry point not visible from the street where the SUV was parked. We scanned for devices downstairs before we moved up. There's a bug in your landline telephone, by the way. On the base unit, not the handset. Daniel looked at the telephone on his nightstand. He hadn't used a landline in 2 years. He used it so infrequently he had essentially forgotten it existed. "We need the drive," Rourke said. "And we need to move quickly. The SUV that's been watching this house, it moved this evening. We're tracking it 2 blocks south. It's possible the blizzard accelerated their timeline. It's possible they've decided to come in tonight." "Tonight," Daniel repeated. "The storm provides cover for them as well as for us. My daughter is in a closet at the end of the hallway." "We know." Rourke's voice was quiet. "That's why we're having this conversation instead of waiting for the police. The police you sent me an 8-minute window on. We didn't send anything. Your housekeeper. Her name is Clara. Clara called 911 from your phone. We weren't expecting that. It changes some things." Rourke lowered the tablet. "Mr. Hartwell." "Daniel, we need to know if you have the drive, and we need to know now. If it's in this house, we take it. We leave through the same window we came in, and when the police arrive, you tell them it was a false alarm. We'll make sure you and your daughter are protected from this point forward." "Protected how?" "Relocation is an option. Witness protection isn't off the table if the case reaches prosecution. But we need the drive first." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Rachel. Not the version of Rachel that Rourke and Calloway were describing: the contractor, the investigator, the woman who had spent 18 months building a case and then walked into a trap to buy time for the evidence to survive. He thought about the Rachel he had known. The one who laughed too loud at bad movies, who ate cereal for dinner when she was tired, who had come to him with a 6-month-old infant in a car seat and said, "I need you to keep her safe," and he had not asked nearly enough questions about why. He had not asked nearly enough questions about a lot of things. He crossed the closet. Not his closet, Lily's room was down the hall. He went to his own closet, moved aside the winter coats, and crouched down to the baseboard at the rear left corner. He pressed his thumb against the board at a specific angle and felt it give. Behind it, in the hollow space between the wall studs, a small, black hard drive with a green stripe on the left side. He had found it 8 months ago, moving coats. He had not known what it was. He had put it back and tried not to think about it. The way you try not to think about the things the dead leave behind that you don't understand. He held it out. Calloway crossed the room in 3 strides and took it with both hands. Downstairs, from the direction of the basement, there was a sound. The sound was specific, not the settling of the house, not a pipe, not wind. It was the sound of something metallic making contact with a surface below. A window frame being levered, or a latch being turned. Rourke was at the bedroom door in 2 seconds. He held up a fist stop and pressed his ear close to the gap without opening it. "Basement," he said, barely audible. "Aldgate's people," Calloway said. Daniel was already thinking about Lily. The closet at the end of the hall. 2 knocks. His daughter with a stuffed rabbit and 3 crackers and no idea what was happening outside the door. "How many?" he asked. "Unknown." Rourke was clipping something to his belt. Daniel recognized the shape of it, the weight of government-issue hardware. "We need to get the drive out of this house before they reach the upper floor. Once it's gone, you have nothing they want, except my daughter, if they figure out who she is." "She's 6 years old," Calloway said. "They want the data." "She's not a target. She's Rachel's daughter." That stopped both of them. A fraction of a pause, a recalibration. "Then she's safest in the closet until this is over," Rourke said. "Which means we need to end it fast." From downstairs, a heavier sound. Footsteps on concrete, moving below. Daniel made a quick, practical assessment. He was in a house with 2 federal agents who had come in through the same window Aldgate's people were currently using. He had a 6-year-old daughter at the end of the hall. He had a housekeeper behind a kitchen counter on the ground floor with his phone. A 911 line and 8 minutes that had probably compressed to 4. He had a tactical flashlight and his own training from a decade he rarely talked about. He had fought in worse configurations. "The kitchen," he said. "Clara." Rourke nodded. "I'll take the staircase. You go for her. The basement stairs come up through the laundry room, which connects to the kitchen." Rourke absorbed this. How many ways in from the laundry room? One door. Does it lock from the kitchen side? Bolt and chain. Then bolt it and get Clara behind the center island. Stay low. Rourke looked at Daniel with the direct, flat assessment of a professional making decisions fast. "Are you going to be a problem?" "No." "Okay. Go." Daniel went. He moved through the bedroom door. Down the hall he checked Lily's door as he passed it. Still closed. No sound from inside, and down the stairs as fast as he could move silently. He was through the kitchen in 4 strides. He could hear movement on the other side of the laundry room door. Close, heavy. More than one person. He threw the bolt, pulled the chain across, pressed his back flat against the wall beside the door frame. Clara was already behind the island, crouched, white-faced, his phone in both hands. She looked at him with the wide, still expression of someone who had been very frightened for a long time and was now running purely on the far side of adrenaline, past fear into something simpler and more functional. "Police?" he said. 3 minutes, she said. They confirmed. She held up the phone so he could see the screen. The 911 line still open. A dispatcher's voice saying, "We're 2 minutes out. Stay on the line." Something hit the laundry room door from the other side. Heavy, blunt, a shoulder or a boot. The bolt held. Daniel counted. The door was solid core, the kind that came with older Chicago houses, built when doors were still built to last. The bolt was steel. It would take time. Upstairs, he heard movement. Then, he heard nothing. Then, the front of the house filled with light. 3 police cruisers and a department SUV hit the front of the house at once, all lights, no sirens, which meant they'd been told to come in quiet. The windows went blue-white-blue in a fast, mechanical rhythm that turned the kitchen into a different room entirely. The sound from the laundry room stopped. Daniel heard voices outside amplified, commanding, and then heavy boots on the front steps. He crossed to the front door and unlocked it before they could take it off the hinges. 2 officers came through in tactical formation, flashlights sweeping, hands on weapons still holstered. "Resident?" the first one demanded. "Yes, Daniel Hartwell. There are at least 2 individuals in my basement who entered through the window on the east side. There are also 2 federal agents somewhere in the upper floor who came in the same way earlier." He said it fast and clearly, the way you say things when every word needs to land exactly where you put it. "My 6-year-old daughter is in a closet at the end of the upstairs hallway. She has not been harmed. She does not know what's happening." The officer looked at him for exactly 1 second with the expression of a man recalibrating everything he had expected to find. Then he turned and spoke into his radio. The next 14 minutes were controlled chaos of the procedural kind, the kind Daniel had operated inside of before, in a different context, in a different life. The basement team was contained before they could retreat back through the window. 2 men, both armed, both presenting false identification that would take about 30 seconds to verify as false, both maintaining the relaxed silence of people who had legal representation already waiting. Rourke and Calloway materialized at the top of the stairs with credentials and a series of quiet, intense conversations that escalated rapidly through the responding officer's chain of command, until someone's phone was being handed to someone else, and words like Northern District and Organized Crime Task Force were being used. Daniel went to get Lily. He knocked twice on the closet door. A beat of silence. Then, "Daddy? Snow monster's gone. Bug, you can come out." The door opened, and Lily Hartwell came out of the closet with the focused expression of a child who has been sitting in the dark for a long time, and has done it without complaint and knows she deserves full credit for this. She was wearing her pajamas with the small yellow stars on them. She had the rabbit tucked under one arm and the flashlight in her other hand. There was a cracker crumb on her chin. She looked up at Daniel and then at the two officers standing in the hallway and then back at Daniel. "Were those real police?" she said. "Real police," he confirmed. "Did they catch the snow monster?" He crouched down to her level. Her eyes were serious and dark and remarkably composed. She had his coloring, or rather, she had Rachel's coloring, and he had always chosen not to examine that coincidence too closely. "They caught it," he said. "It's not coming back." She considered this. "Can I have hot chocolate?" "You can have whatever you want." He picked her up. She settled against his shoulder with the ease of a child who has never had a reason to doubt that the person carrying her will not put her down. He stood in the hallway with his daughter and listened to the activity in the floors below, and above him the procedural dismantling of a situation he still only partially understood, and he thought about Rachel, about what it cost to plan that carefully for the things you love, about the kind of math you do when you know the outcome and you're trying to protect as much as possible in the time you have left. He thought about the drive and what it contained and who would use it and what it would become in the hands of prosecutors and federal judges and eventually a jury somewhere in this city. He thought about whether any of that would mean anything in the end. To Lily. He decided it would. It was past 3 in the morning by the time the last patrol car pulled away from the curb. Clara Whitfield sat at the kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea she had made herself as soon as the house was cleared, as if the act of making tea was proof that the house was a kitchen again and not a staging ground. She looked exhausted in the clean, flat way that follows extreme, sustained fear, not shaken past shaking, into stillness. Lily was asleep on the couch under 3 blankets, one of which was the good throw that Rachel had given Daniel 2 years ago, and which he had always meant to move somewhere less accessible to a 6-year-old who used it as a fort component. Daniel made coffee. He brought 2 cups to the table and sat down across from Clara. "I owe you an explanation," he said. "You owe me a significant raise," Clara said, and then an explanation. It surprised him enough that he almost smiled. "The raise is a given." "Good." She pulled the mug closer. "Was any of that connected to Lily? To who she is?" He looked at her. "What makes you ask that?" "Because I've been with you for almost a year," Clara said, "and I've been watching her for almost a year. She has your cadence when she talks, the way you stop before you say something you're not sure about. She has your patience, but she doesn't have your face." She looked at him evenly. "I'm not asking for details. I'm asking whether she's safe." "She's going to be safe," Daniel said. He meant it with more certainty than he had felt about many things. "The people who were in this house tonight, the ones from the government, they got what they came for. And the ones from the other side are going to be occupied for a while. And after that, there may be some changes." He wrapped both hands around his coffee. They used the word relocation. Clara was quiet for a moment. "When?" "I don't know yet. I'm going to have a longer conversation with them in the morning." "Or whenever this constitutes morning." She nodded slowly. She had the particular composure of someone who has worked through the worst of a scenario and come out the other side with a revised understanding of their own capacity. It was not the same as being unaffected. It was more like having passed a test you didn't know you were taking and finding, to your mild surprise, that you had passed it. "When you go," she said, "will you tell me? Not leave a note. Actually tell me." "Yes," he said. She drank her tea. Outside, the storm was finally beginning to ease, the snow coming down lighter now, quieter, the wind dropping to something manageable. The blue-white pulse of police lights had faded from the windows an hour ago, and the street was the kind of empty that only happened at this hour in this kind of weather. Absolute, clean, the city returned to itself. "Can I ask you something?" Daniel said. "You can try. When you heard them on the stairs and you had 4 seconds to act, you put her in the closet first." Clara looked at him. "Of course I did. Not your phone. Not the door. Her. She's 6 years old, Daniel." Her voice was quiet but very direct. "She's 6 years old and she trusts me. What else would I do? He looked at her for a moment. Then he looked away. At the window. At the snow coming down slow and white and purposeful, blanketing everything. Thank you, he said. Raise first, Clara said. Gratitude second. He did smile then. He couldn't help it. Rourke called at 9:30. The snow had stopped some time before dawn, and the city was emerging into a hard, brilliant winter morning, the kind that follows major storms. The sky so blue it seemed artificial, every surface coated in white that hurt to look at directly. Lily was awake and had decided that the snowfall was directly related to her having been brave during the snow monster game, and was lobbying loudly for a walk to the park to assess conditions. Daniel stepped into the hallway to take the call. The 2 individuals taken from your basement are currently being processed. They won't be talking until they've spoken to their attorney, which is actually irrelevant. They're being held on weapons charges while we build the larger case. Rourke's voice was different in daylight, less clipped, still professional but with a texture that hadn't been there at midnight. The drive is intact. Our analysts have begun verification. Everything Rachel assembled is there. All of it? All of it. 18 months of work. The full account trail on Aldgate Continental, identified entities in 4 offshore jurisdictions, and a list of domestic partners that's going to create some significant problems for several people who consider themselves quite secure. He paused. She was exceptional at what she did. I know, Daniel said. We'd like to debrief you formally at our Chicago field office at your earliest convenience, meaning today, if possible. But we'll work around Lily's schedule, and we need to have a substantive conversation about protective measures going forward. Relocation. It's one option, not the only one. Depending on how the Aldgate case proceeds and what level of exposure you and Lily carry as connected parties, we may be able to manage security around your current location rather than disrupting your lives more than we already have. More than you already have, Daniel repeated. I acknowledge the irony of that framing. A pause that might, in a slightly different version of Rourke, have been sheepish. There's one more thing. There usually is. Rachel left a letter. It was on the drive, encrypted separately, addressed to you. Our analysts flagged it, but haven't opened it. That's yours. We'll give it to you today. Daniel stood in the hallway for a moment after he hung up, looking at nothing in particular. The letter had been waiting on a hard drive in a hollow wall for over a year. Rachel had put it there knowing he would eventually find the drive, or that someone would come looking and find it in the process, and either way it would reach him. She had thought of everything. Even at the end, even knowing she was walking into something she wouldn't walk back out of, she had thought of everything. He didn't know yet what the letter said. He would know today, and whatever it said, it would change some things and confirm others. And the version of the past 2 years he carried in his head would shift, and he would have to find a way to hold the 2 versions simultaneously, the Rachel he had known and the Rachel who had been planning for his life after her. That was the thing about the dead. They kept giving you things to carry. Daddy. Lily appeared at the end of the hallway in her coat and hat, already dressed for the park, the rabbit tucked into her coat pocket with its ears visible above the zipper. The snow is not going to assess itself. Where did you learn the word assess? From you. She said it as if this was obvious. Can we go? He put his phone in his pocket. 5 minutes. I need my coat. You always say 5 minutes, Lily said. And then it's 11 minutes. Today I mean 5. She looked at him with the direct, assessing expression he still occasionally saw in a mirror on his own face and in photographs of a woman he had loved and still missed, and was only now beginning to understand. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied, and disappeared back toward the front door. He went to get his coat. The federal field office on West Roosevelt had the particular neutrality of spaces that served a function too serious for personality. Gray carpet, white walls, the mechanical hum of ventilation and purpose. Rourke met them in the lobby and took them upstairs to a conference room where someone had thought to put a box of crayons and a coloring book on one end of the table, which Lily approved of with the pragmatic efficiency of a child who understood hospitality when she saw it. The debrief took 2.5 hours and was mostly Daniel answering questions he had already considered on the walk over. He had composed his answers during the 20-minute walk in the way he had always composed things under pressure, quietly, methodically, without the appearance of effort. The questions covered everything from how he had come to have guardianship of Lily, to the discovery of the hard drive, to his prior professional background, which he answered accurately and briefly, and which produced a short silence from Rourke that suggested the answer had confirmed something he had already suspected. Lily colored with focused concentration and accepted a cup of hot chocolate from an agent who introduced herself as Tessa, and who had clearly had some training in child interaction, because she spoke to Lily at eye level and with the kind of casual directness that 6-year-olds respond to better than most adults. By the end of the debrief, Lily had finished 2 pages of the coloring book and given Tessa a detailed assessment of which colors she had used incorrectly on her own jacket. At the end, Rourke slid a sealed envelope across the table. Daniel's name on the front, in Rachel's handwriting. He waited until they were outside, in the cold, white morning. Lily running ahead in the snow that nobody had shoveled yet on this particular block, leaving her boot prints in the unbroken surface. He opened it. Rachel's handwriting was small and precise. The handwriting of someone who had spent years taking notes that needed to be read later under difficult conditions. She had written, "I know this isn't how you wanted to find out. I know it isn't how I wanted to tell you. There wasn't a good way, and I ran out of time trying to find one. Lily is yours. Not legally, not biologically, but in every way that actually matters, which is the only way I ever measured anything worth measuring. I chose you before she was old enough to know your name, and I chose you because I watched you for 8 months before I ever spoke to you, and what I saw was a man who understood that showing up was the whole of it, not the heroics. Not the expertise, just showing up, every single day, for the people who needed you. She needs you. She's always needed you specifically. I made sure of that. The drive has everything. The people who will come for it are either dangerous or trustworthy. You'll know the difference by now. If you're reading this, you already handled it. You always handle it. That's not a compliment. It's just what I know about you. One more thing. The park on Kimball, the one with the oak tree in the northeast corner. She used to cry when we passed it, and I could never figure out why. Not a tantrum, something quieter. Something with more weight to it. The way children sometimes recognize things before they have the language to explain what they are recognizing. She stopped crying about 6 months before I brought her to you. I don't know what changed. I've thought about it more than I should. Maybe she figured something out that I hadn't yet. She was always ahead of me that way. Take care of each other. Archon. He folded the letter and put it in his inside pocket. Ahead of him, Lily had reached the end of the block and turned to check that he was still there. She was standing in snow up to her knees, coat a bright red against the white, rabbit ears visible above the zipper. She raised one hand in the patient. Ironic wave of a child who has been waiting longer than 5 minutes. He raised his hand back. He walked toward her. The city was coming back to life around them. The first cars on the road, the distant percussion of someone's shovel on concrete, a dog somewhere a few streets over, the ordinary sounds of a morning reconvening after a night that had been larger and more consequential than most mornings got to follow. The light was clear and cold, and made everything look precise. The way winter light in Chicago made everything look precise, as if the storm had cleaned the air of anything uncertain. Lily fell into step beside him, her hand in his, her breath making small, white clouds. "Daddy," she said. "Yeah, the snow monster isn't really gone, is it?" He looked at her. She was looking ahead at the park down the block, the oak tree in the northeast corner visible from here, its bare branches carrying a full load of last night's snow, bright and still. "What makes you say that?" he said. because the good stories don't end like that. She said it matter-of-factly, the way she said most things. In good stories, the snow monster goes away, but, it might come back. That's what makes it good. He was quiet for a moment. The park was getting closer. The oak tree was large and old, and the snow on its branches hadn't fallen yet, held there by the cold, which would last as long as the cold lasted, and no longer. "You might be right about that," he said. "I usually am," Lily said. They walked into the park together, boot prints side by side in the unbroken white, and the oak tree didn't tell them anything. And the morning continued. Warren Aldgate was indicted 14 weeks later on 17 federal counts, including money laundering, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder in the second degree. The last count came late, added after forensic reconstruction of Rachel Moon's final weeks produced evidence sufficient to tie Aldgate's organization to what had been ruled a traffic accident on the Eisenhower Expressway. The case made national news for approximately 11 days, the way large but complex financial crimes do a burst of coverage followed by the gradual retreat of public attention toward things more immediate, more legible, more easily resolved into heroes and villains. Daniel did not watch the coverage. He read the relevant documents when Rourke forwarded them, understood what he needed to understand, and filed it away. They did not relocate. After a thorough assessment of the threat environment following Aldgate's arrest and the secondary arrests of his senior associates, the determination was made that the risk profile had reduced sufficiently to make relocation unnecessary. Daniel requested the security assessment in writing. He read it twice. He made his own assessment on top of theirs, which was something Rourke later told him was unusual for a civilian, and which Daniel declined to explain. Clara Whitfield received a 20% raise effective immediately and a second raise 3 months later that Daniel decided on the same day. Lily told him, unprompted, that Clara was her favorite person after him and the rabbit. Clara accepted both raises without comment and continued to do her job with the same composed competence she had always brought to it, which now included a tacit, unspoken understanding between the three of them. Daniel, Clara, and Lily that some nights were larger than other nights, and that what mattered was showing up the morning after. Lily turned 7 in March. She had a party with 6 friends and a cake shaped like a rabbit. She did not know what had happened in her house during the blizzard in January, and would not know for many years. And when she did find out, as she eventually would, because she was Rachel's daughter and Daniel's daughter, and she would eventually ask the right questions in the right order, Daniel intended to tell her the full truth. Not the comfortable version, the true one. She deserved that. Rachel had thought so too. He could tell from the letter, from the way she had arranged everything, not to protect Lily from hard things, but to make sure she arrived at hard things with the right person beside her. That was the whole plan. That had always been the whole plan. The park on Kimball acquired a new bench in the spring, city-funded, installed near the northeast corner under the oak tree. Daniel and Lily walked past it regularly. Lily never cried when they passed it. She had stopped long before he came into her life, for reasons that remained hers. Sometimes she touched the bark of the oak tree as they passed, the way children touch things to confirm they are real. Daniel never asked her about it. Some things you wait for the person to tell you when they're ready. That's not patience. That's just what you do.